Thronecraft News. I'm Ito, your host for this week's news. This week's top news: the rise of nationalism in Europe. The rising tensions between Gonroth and Sorales, and in case expedition to the south. Our first top news this week are the elections of Europe, held last Friday until Saturday. The Europeans voted for a new parliament as well as for a new Doge, having the choice between the Liberal Union of Europe and the National Party of Europe. It was a close race, mostly considering the foreign affairs policy that Europe should adopt. The Liberals were more for peace and re-establishing the relations with New Kharkiv, while the Nationalists prompted for a more big-stick diplomacy, force instead of negotiations. It went as far that Doge Mycroft Newwind resigned his position to bring pressure to the voters not to vote nationalist. But the nationalists won with 75% of all votes. Adding to that, nationalist Doge was elected with 87% of all votes. But why did the Europeans vote this party? What explains the rise of nationalism? This is why we have in our studio today the political analyst of Europe. Welcome to our studio, Fori.
Thank you, Ita.
Now tell us, Fori, what are the factors that could explain the rise of nationalism?
Well, Ita, the Europeans have had enough. In the last month, they have been under a lot of pressure from other cities, mostly because of New Kharkiv's crisis with the inheritance of Eurith's throne, as well as continuing murders by the Ripper of Eurith, and let's not forget the Creature of Eurith and Morgamir. During all these events, the Liberal government did nothing. They put all their faith into Mycroft Newwind, who they knew as the leader of the attack on New Kharkiv's camp after the death of King William, but after he officially entered the office of Doge, he did nothing, preferring to avoid conflict.
Alright, so did Doge Mycroft... Alright, so is Doge Mycroft responsible as well for the rise of nationalism in Europe?
Well, yes and no. He knew that Eurith needed some release of pressure, which is why he led the attack on New Kharkiv's camp in order to avoid full-out war, but as a liberal, he continued Kemen's policy of balance of power. Going to war would mean an uncertain outcome, destroying the balance of war and potentially leading to multiple wars. At the time, Eurith was still unstable and needed some time to stabilize its government. In the end, though, he was stubborn to his political convictions, and his choice to resign, though, was a bad idea, since now both Parliament and Doge are nationalists. That leaves no counterpower.
Alright. And what did the National Party do so far? Did they keep their promises?
Well, the day after their rise to power, the Ripper of Eurith was found and killed, and the economy started to thrive again, and science as well as art prospered once more. But these events are rather the result of the Liberal policy more so than the result of actions by the new government, and the only actions they have taken so far are to forbid any cooperation with New Kharkiv and announcing the beginning of their new construction projects.
Alright, thank you, Fori, for this report. In more top news, the rising tensions between Sorales and Gonroth. In the previous weeks there have been several diplomatic incidents between the two cities, with citizens killing members of opposing cities. The tensions have only grown between the two leaders, writing each other very angry letters that are more and more hostile. Internationally, not many cities have pronounced themselves. We know that New Kharkiv will support its ally Gonroth, while the Southern Union tends to support Sorales. As of now, only Europe has proposed a possible solution, that every city should stay out of the fight and let them do it between themselves, hence not causing more tensions between other cities. In the proposed accord, mercenaries will be allowed, not wearing the banner of any city. But there seems to be no efforts to stop the tension or even try to find a peaceful solution. Our last top news goes to the daring expedition plans of New Kharkiv to the south. There have already been many expeditions to the south. The best known one, described with 3 books that are still in Europe's library, is that of Kemen Kerif of Rael Kinset. But more on the expeditions with a report from Nock. Nock?
Yes, Mary Kincaid, the king of New Kharkiv, is heading on an expedition to the Highlands. With him, he has several noteworthy people, like Iro Kincaid and Tiri Newwind. Their goal is to map out the Helllands, while also looking for ruins. If possible, they are also trying to find a way to stop Morgmir there, as it is a possibility that the lands hold some sort of secret.
Thank you, Nock. It has to be said that this expedition was a possible reconciliation between New Kargath and Yurif. Many Yurifians, mostly scientists, were interested to join. And as said before, there have already been joint expeditions between the two cities and the two families. The government of Yurif does not permit any joint expeditions. It is tolerating that Yurifians may join them, but they would never be joint work between the two cities. In more news, the return of King San. King San has disappeared from Thesmondan shortly after Yurif had conquered it. No one knows where he went to, as he just slowly disappeared. During that time, Yurif rebuilt Thesmondan's government to its own image, and eventually even giving it independence. But now, months after he went, he came back, unharmed, taking back the reins of Thesmondan. Only time will tell if he will continue the new democracy that Yurif has installed, or go back to the absolute monarchy he advocates in the past. What is certain is that it will wake up all tensions again, the most explosive one being that of New Kargath, who still has a bounty on his head. The king of Gunroth has been abducted, but shortly after could free himself again from his captor. From what we know, he was abducted by the temple keepers, the servants of Morgmir. He captured the king to give him a choice between him and Morgmir. The king chose to die and spare his people the ruling of such an evil creature. He was tortured for days, but saved after a week by a young woman called Enid Winter, whom he later anointed to nobility. His son and heir ruled in his stead while he was gone and captured, and already promises to be a great ruler in the future. And then last, the Ripper of Yurif. Although some believe that the notorious Isaac Lathras was the Ripper of Yurif, he in fact wasn't. He did commit a lot of murders in the city of Yurif and is still searched by the guard, but the real Ripper was still alive and continued to take victims with him. The Yurifians finally gathered together and went after every clue to find his secret hideout. In the end, they found his little island in the middle of a lake, where he played with his victims. The brave man who went on a quest to kill the Ripper and killed him finally and ended the dark ages of Yurif once and for all. This was TC News. Thank you for watching and see you next week.